Today, we are going to be building a Nuxt app. So this is very exciting, and we're going to go pretty deep. But in order for us to go that deep, you're going to need to know a couple things first. So you're going to need some basic VueJS knowledge, whether that's from watching my previous videos, reading the docs, or building an app of your own. Just as long as you know the basics, that's fine. You'll also need, for Section 8, basic VueX knowledge. So if you don't have basic VueX knowledge, you can just skip Section 8 and you'll be fine. You will not need basic vue-router knowledge. It might be helpful, but although Nuxt builds on vue-router, it essentially replaces the entire API. So you don't need that. You also don't need to have watched all 8+ hours of my building an app series. So this video is a great starting point for your Nuxt journey. So let's take a look at what we'll be covering. So first, we're going to go over why we should use Nuxt in the first place. If you're happy with your current Vue setup, why should you change? Turns out there's some pretty good reasons, but it isn't for everyone. Next, we'll go over the installation process. And then we'll go over the project structure. So what is in each of the files and folders that the basic installation gives you. Next, we'll go over pages and routing. And so pages, I think, is one of the coolest additions to Nuxt over a basic Vue app. And essentially, it eliminates the entire router file and does a lot of good stuff for you. Then we'll go over creating a navbar and using the layouts functionality of Nuxt. Then we'll learn how to talk to the server using axios and the asyncData hook. Then we'll go over using meta tags to change the title, which helps a lot with SEO. And then we'll implement VueX within our Nuxt app using the fetch hook. And finally, we'll have a summary and review. That is a lot to cover in one video. We are going to go farther into Nuxt than most of the YouTube videos you'll see. So let's get started. But first, a quick PSA. Down below in the description, there's going to be time-stamped links that you can use to get to any section of this video. And there's also links to the GitHub commits that we're going to be creating in the later sections. All right, let's get going. So the first question we'll have to answer is, why Nuxt? Why not just use Vue on its own? And probably the biggest reason people switch to Nuxt is it's got server-side rendering built in. So that means that instead of waiting for the JavaScript to load and then processing, calling out to the API, all that all happens server-side. And then the user gets sent an HTML file. And for your regular users, that's not a huge deal, just saving a second or two on initial load. But for web crawlers, that is a huge difference. So you're going to get a lot better search results if you have some sort of server-side rendering. There's only, as far as I know, only the Google web crawler does JavaScript, and it still penalizes you for that initial load time. Second, you get automatic code splitting. And so that's another thing that as your app gets bigger, it's going to be a bigger and bigger deal, because when you're sending over stuff over the wire, you don't want to send your 3 megabyte admin file. Let's say, for example, you've got this really heavy app. It's 10 megabytes or whatever, even 20 megabytes. So if it's a user that really loves this app, finds it's useful, then, loading all that is unfortunate, but not terrible. But if you have to load all that for a splash page as well, that is a disaster. People should not have to load 20 megabytes in order to look at your splash page. So automatic code splitting solves that for us. Another advantage of using Nuxt is easier async data. So I don't know if you've ever had this problem where you're loading data, but it hasn't loaded yet. And so your console throws all these errors. And so what you have to do is you have to grab where the data is going to be and do data and data dot whatever you're going to do to it. And so that gets really annoying. And asyncData will block the loading of that page until your data is loaded. And that solves that whole category of errors. Nuxt also includes a lot of the popular Vue packages built in already. So VueX, vue-router, vue-meta, and probably a couple others that I'm less familiar with. And so it integrates them all into one whole. And so all the stuff, all the conveniences that you're used to from those come automatically. Now, I'm sure there are a lot more advantages to Nuxt, but I'm just getting started with it. And so we'll discover all those advantages in future videos as we learn more. However, before we get to installing it, I do want to point out one downside. So about 1.5 years ago, someone asked on GitHub, how do we add Nuxt to an already existing project? And the answer was, the simplest solution is to rewrite from scratch. So if you have a large app already, that is a huge downside. Granted, most of the changes take place in the routing layer and the data loading layer, so you're not going to have to change your VueX stores or your components much at all. But this is still something to keep in mind. Nuxt is not a drop-in solution for your existing app. Let's go ahead and install Nuxt and create our first app. So we don't actually have to install Nuxt and do these as separate steps. Using npx, we can just use create Nuxt app. And then as the final argument, we'll include the name of our project. So we hit enter, and it's going to fetch all of our packages. Then it's going to start asking us some questions. So this is the project name we want, and we'll want a description, and our author name, and we'll choose our package manager. Let's go with Yarn. And then we can choose a UI framework. So I do like having a UI framework, but when I tried it earlier with Vuetify, it had some weird defaults, so we'll install it manually later. Then a custom server framework. So we've already got a server running that has our data, so we'll just hit none. And then we can choose some Nuxt modules. So we definitely want Axios. And by the way, we're hitting spacebar to choose these. And we'll go ahead and have some progressive web app support. All right, and our linting tools will go with just ESLint. And no testing framework for now. And so this one's important. So if we pick single page app, then we're not going to get the server-side rendering benefits. So if we want just an HTML page to be displayed first before it loads Vue and all of our code, we'll need to pick universal. And I am using VS Code, so I'll use jsconfig.json. And now it'll install everything for us. Now let's take a look at what's been built. We will cd into our folder and run yarn dev. And so that will start up our server. So it's in development mode, and it's listening on localhost 3000. So we can type that into our address bar, and we'll see that our site is running. Awesome. However, we now run into our first problem. So I have a server, and it's built in Rails, And Rails, by default, also uses the port 3000. And so if I had had my Rails server running first, then it would be our Nuxt app that would be giving the error. So how can we solve this? We could change the port that our server is using, but you might not always have control over your server. So let's go ahead and change where our Nuxt app is running. So to fix this, open up your Nuxt app in your favorite text editor. I'm using VS Code today. And then find the nuxt.config.js file. So this is going to include all the configuration for your specific Nuxt app. So notice that the universal mode that we selected during the setup is set here. And then we'll add an option at the end called server, and we will set the port to be 8000. And so we're going to save that, and we'll note that it's already reloaded to be on port 8000. In our server, we will go to port 8000 and see this is still running there. And now we can start up our backend server, and it will run properly now. So we've got our app installed and running. And pretty soon we are going to start customizing it and building our screencasting app. But before we do that, I do want to do an overview of the project structure. This will be just a quick overview, but I know that I feel a lot more comfortable if I know what each of the files and folders does before I start working. So first we'll look at the 3 folders that contain Vue files. That is pages, layouts, and components. So if you've worked with vue-router before, then pages is the equivalent of views. And so each of your individual URLs is going to have a file in pages that's associated with it. Now, each of these pages is a Vue component, but it has some special properties, which we'll get into later in this video. And the same goes for the Vue files in layouts. They're also components, but they have a couple extra properties added on by Nuxt. And so each of the layouts acts as something that sort of wraps all your components. Once again, towards the end of this video, we'll be discussing layouts in more detail. And finally, the components folder. These are the reusable components that you would think of normally as Vue components. There are either not any or not many things added on by Nuxt, and you use them by putting them in your pages, in your layouts, or in other components. Okay, so those are the 3 folders where you'll be putting your .vue files. Your store folder is where you're going to be putting your VueX store files. Next, we have our plugins. We're not going to build any plugins in this video, but they are a special type of function that they're run before mounting the root VueJS application. And middleware is another special type of function, and they're run before rendering either a page or a group of pages. We have 2 or 3, depending on how you look at it, folders left. So we have the static folder and the assets folder. So the assets folder is for your uncompiled assets that you do want compiled using Webpack. The static folder is for your assets that you do not want compiled using Webpack. You want them directly accessible. We're not going to use these 2 folders in this particular video. And finally, we have the .nuxt folder, which it looks like it includes a lot of stuff that is useful, but documentation doesn't really say anything. And if I change one of these, it doesn't show up in our Git changes. So I don't think we're supposed to change them. They are just for reference. So those are all of our folders. Let's go over these files now. So the first thing you might notice is that there's no router file. And that's because the folder structure of pages automatically creates our router for us. And we'll go over more on how that works later on in the video when we're creating our own pages. Okay, so the first four do not actually affect how the app runs. Editor config does stuff for our editor. ESLint specifies how our styling is supposed to be, our code styling, that is, not our visual styling. Git ignore will make sure our Git ignores the things that are not useful. And then jsconfig.json is something specifically for VS Code. Now, these three do affect how our app runs. Nuxt.config.js, we already saw that we can use it to change stuff like changing the port that it's served on. And it comes with some pre-built-in stuff. So if we want plugins and modules, we will have to put those in. And then we can configure modules such as axios in their own separate configuration. And I don't think we'll be needing to mess with this throughout the rest of this video, but if you need to set an option, this is probably where you want to look first. Finally, we have our package.json and our yarn.lock. So our package.json, it has our dependencies, our dev dependencies for stuff like linting, and then our scripts. And you notice we've already run yarn dev, which just runs Nuxt. And then yarn.lock locks in our dependencies to a specific version so that our development and production will have the same versions of everything. So now we've got our app running, you know your way around the folder structure, and it is finally time to start building our app. Let's make our first page. So we'll go ahead and create a new file in Pages, and we'll call it videos.vue. So here we can create our base, and let's go ahead and just make sure it's working. So we have a header with videos, and then when we go to Chrome, it turns out ESLint is a spoil sport, so let's turn that off. We'll go to our, we'll actually go to our Nuxt config and turn off this build module. And then that should be enough to, yeah, now it behaves nicely. All right, now we'll go to /videos, and we can see that it is showing up. Excellent. Notice that we did not have to put anything saying, hey, we've got a route here. It automatically got that from the fact that we had something called videos in the pages directory. And in fact, all of the nesting that you would do within the router file can be done within the pages directory just by manipulating the folder structure. And we'll be showing that in more detail through the rest of this section. But first, let's go ahead and make this more of an actual component. So within a pages component, you can do everything that a regular Vue component can do. So for example, you can have your data. And so let's go ahead and get an array of videos. All right, we've pasted this short array of videos in, and then go ahead and loop through them. And notice this is working exactly like it does in a regular Vue app. And we can see that, all right, they're displaying. The styling might not be the best, but we'll fix some of that when we talk about layouts. Our next goal is to be able to click on one of these and then be able to be taken to a page that's like this in the URL. so slash the ID, and then be able to see that video. We'll start with the technique that we know will be ineffective, but the way that it's ineffective will be instructive. So we want videos/1, so we'll just create videos/1. And here we will create, say, we are in video 1. And you'll notice here that it didn't create a file called videos/1. It created a videos folder and then a 1.vue file within that folder. So keep that in mind. We will go to videos/1, and you'll notice that unlike videos/2, it is showing something. It is found, but it doesn't show this. It just shows videos. And the reason for that is videos/1 is a child route of videos. So within videos, we need to put in Nuxt child. And so we can see now that we are in video 1. And my grammar's bad. Oh well. So it will show what's in here, and then in Nuxt child, it'll show what's in the child routes. This is similar to router view in a regular vue-router. And so anywhere that you would use router view, you'll now use Nuxt child. Okay, so that's all great, except we don't want to show the entire list of videos above where we're looking at a video. We don't even want to show it below. Like, we could do this, and now the list of videos is not in our way as much, but we still don't want that. And the solution to this is to have an index page. So we index.vue. And as a matter of fact, we'll just go ahead and rename this. And now, when we go to videos 1, we just see we're in videos 1. And when we go to /videos, we see what's in the index page. Now, what is implicit in this is that there is always going to be something like this. So our videos.vue is going to be this by default. So this is equivalent to not having videos.vue at all. But if we want something in both the individual routes and the index route, then we can put it here. And it's there and in the individual route. So we've learned a little bit about the structure, but there's some issues. So first, that grammar, that's fixed now. Second, we don't want to make a 2.vue and a 3.vue and so on and so forth. We want these routes to be dynamic. And so what we'll do for that is we will change this, and we'll do _ID. And what that'll do is that'll give us a param. And now instead of saying we are in video hard-coded 1, we can say we are in video $route.params.id. Let's give that a try. It says we're in video 1, and if we're in video 5, all right, we're in video 5. So anything that has an underscore will be turned into a param. Now let's turn that ID into an actual video. So we'll go to our index, and we will grab all the data here, and we'll once again return that video array. And then we will create a computed property of video. And this video will use the params ID on the route and the videos here, and we'll find the correct video. Then up here we will get video.name instead of just doing the params ID. And now video 5 is unavailable. But video 1 and video 16 and video 71, the videos that we have, are all available. Now let's take this structure even further. Let's say we want an edit page in videos/id/edit. So what we'll do is we'll rename this to id/index.vue, and then we'll add an edit.vue. And those are both in the ID folder. And here we'll just say editing, and we'll get the route.params.id. So we'll do /edit and see that it is indeed getting the ID. So at this point, we could paste in the list of videos again, and then recreate the computed property, and then put the name here. But I have a better idea. Let's go to our index.vue, and we'll take all of this machinery, and we will cut it, and we will paste it into a new file, _id.vue. And so we'll put that all in there, and then in our Nuxt child component, we will feed in the video. And to make that work, we'll have to go in here and define our props and say that a video will be passed in. And now we'll see that it's working exactly as we expect. And we'll go ahead and go to edit and put in props video and put in video.name here. And then when we go to edit, we'll see it showing up correctly. So that is pretty cool. We are able to pass down props to child routes, just like we were passing down stuff to a child component. Because, I mean, pages really are just components with some extra stuff added. And in a future section, we'll be seeing some of that extra stuff, specifically the asyncData hook. But first, let's clean up a bit. So in our videos.vue, we'll want to clean up that, and let's go ahead and put some links in here so that we can access the individual videos more easily. So we will use the Nuxt link component, which, if you've used vue-router, is very similar to what they have, just calling it a different name. And we'll have our to as well, and we will go ahead and put in /videos and then the video ID. And we'll see that it does create those links, and we click on them and they work. Now we'll go to that show page and we'll add in an edit button. So just a basic button for now. And we'll wrap that in a Nuxt link. And we'll see that that link works as well. Then in edit, we will go ahead and create a button there as well. And now we can go back and forth between the edit and show pages. We don't yet have a link to get back to the videos page. That's what we'll be adding in the next section, when we will create our navbar and learn about layouts. In this section, we're going to add a navbar up at the top here that can take us between our videos page and our home page. And we're also going to make this videos page centered a little bit better so it's not shoved over there to the side. In a regular Vue app, we would probably put this in app.vue, but this is a Nuxt app, and so the architecture is a little bit different. In our pages, we have our index.vue, which is our home page, and we have our videos index. What's above those if not app.vue? Where can we put our navbar? You may have guessed from the title of this section, it will be in the layouts. In our case, the default layout for now. We'll be going over alternate layouts later in this section. So let's take a step back and look at the architecture of Nuxt. So on the outside, we have our entire HTML file. We're not going to mess with that. And then we have our layout, which is what we'll be learning about in this section. And then we have our top-level pages. So our top-level pages are the ones that choose which layout they're going to use. And in our app, we have our home page and our videos page as our top-level pages. And then within them, there are page children, which are everything in these folders. So now that we know the basic architecture, let's go ahead and start messing with our default layout. So here, our default layout is just a template and some styles. And those styles came with the app. And the template is very simple. It's a wrapper div, and then the rest of the Nuxt app. We can put stuff around that, but we will not want to ever delete that. So here we can see it's above, then our Nuxt app, and then below. And it's showing up on every page. And if we delete this, well, it's just what's in the layout. So we don't want to delete that. Let's go ahead and create our navbar. So we'll have a div, and we'll give it an ID of navbar. And with that ID, we can start styling it. We will give it a height of 40 pixels, a width of 100%, and a background color of a dark gray. And this will not be the most stylish navbar. In future videos, we will do much better styling than we have right now, but this is just showing you the features of Nuxt. All right, so we've got that, and we'll start putting links in there. So we can do a Nuxt link, and it will be to just the home page. And we'll do another Nuxt link that is to videos. And we'll see that, okay, they're not very visible, but they do work. Let's make them a little bit more visible. All right, that is much better. And we'll go ahead and give them a little bit of margin right so they're not all squished together. All right, that's good. Now we'll want all our stuff no longer shoved off to the left, but, centered a little bit better. And so what we'll do for that, we will, around our Nuxt, we'll go ahead and have a div with an ID of default body. Wrap our app in that, and then in default body, we will have a max width of 800 pixels, and then we will have a margin of auto. And so that will essentially center the 800 pixel element. Good. Let's go ahead and do that for our navbar as well. We'll wrap these links in another div, and we'll give it the class of Navbar Links. And the reason we're doing this is because we want the navbar to stretch across the entire length of the screen. We want that width to stay 100%. But we also want the links themselves to be centered. And so we will copy this code, and now they should be centered. Excellent. Then we'll see that we can go to any of these, we can go to the edit page, and we can go to the home page. And the navbar is the same. Well, essentially the same. There's a slight x-axis shift when going between home and videos, but that's not a big deal. It's probably a CSS problem and not a layout problem. So we've got our default layout, and it's working pretty well for us. Now, what if, let's say we wanted to have a route where it's /theater, where you can take up the entire screen and there's no navbar. You just watch the video like it's a theater. And so we can't actually have it like this, because it has to be a top-level layout. What we'd have to do is create something like this. So theater is the top level. So we can go ahead and do that. We'll make our alternate layout, and we will be sure to include our Nuxt app, and then around that we'll be wrapping a div with the ID of theater body. And then we'll give that some very simple styling. We will be giving it just a background color of black. And all right, so there's an issue. We don't have Sass here, but my default component creator puts in the Sass. So, all right, much better. Now we need to create the theater route where we're going to be using this layout. So we'll go to our pages directory and create a new theater.vue. And here we will, actually in here, we'll just go ahead and make the text color white by default. We'll put some text in there so we can tell we're in the correct route. And then we will define our layout as theater. So we'll go there, and excellent. It is clearly using the theater layout. The styling is not exactly what we wanted. We wanted this to go all the way down. But that is not a Nuxt issue or a layout issue. That is a CSS issue. And so I'll consider this a success. We have successfully created our default layout, which has our navbar. And we've created our alternate layout and learned how to use that layout from a top-level page. So far, we've been hard-coding our videos array into each route that needs it. And it's only been in 2 different pages so far, so it hasn't been a huge deal. But as our app grows and our data gets more complex, and as we want it to respond to changes made by users, then this will no longer cut it. We'll need to pull it from a server. Fortunately, Nuxt has some great built-in tools for letting us do just that. So first is asyncData. This is one of the added hooks in a Nuxt page. And so what asyncData does is basically the return value of it gets put into data. And so this would run just the same as data. So this and this are the exact same as of now. And you can also have a data hook while you have an async data hook. And your data hook would be for your static data. Async data would be for your dynamic data you're pulling from the server. Now, what sets async data apart from just a regular data call is that in async data, it's not going to display the template until the promise that you return from it resolves. So here we're not returning a promise, so it'll just display immediately. But we could return, a new promise, or if we're going to use axios to call to our server, then that automatically returns a promise. So we could call axios.get/videos. This is just sample code. This doesn't actually work yet. And so if axios.get returns a promise, it'll wait until the server call is finished. So let's try to make this code actually work. So we'll have to get axios from our context, and we'll call $.axios. And then instead of /videos, we'll be getting http://localhost 3000/API/videos. And then we will assign that to our response, and we'll wait for that to finish using the async await syntax. So it'll wait here until this resolves, then assign it to response. And then let's go ahead and console log our response, and then stop it with the debugger. So we'll need to open our console to make this work, and we'll reload. And it looks like our console log and debugger are not working. Why is that? So we'll wait, and now they're working. So what was the difference between those two cases? So notice, we're on this page, we reload, it's not working. Then we click to another page, and we go back to the page, and it's working. So the difference was the second time we reached it via a link, whereas the first time we reached it via the URL. So remember, Nuxt does server-side rendering on the first page. So that means when we go to /videos, it's being rendered on the server, which means that the browser doesn't run our console.log or our debugger, and the server doesn't respond to debugger or console.log. It just skips over them. So this can be frustrating when you're trying to debug, but there is a reason for it. And to get the benefits of server-side rendering, Nuxt does have to do this sort of magic. And it's better that you understand the magic so you can work around it when it gets in your way. So in order to check out our response data, we'll have to go to another page and then click on the videos link. And now we are properly in our debugger. And so our response, can see we can get .data, and in .data, there is an array, and we'll be wanting the attributes on each of those items. So we'll be doing something like this. All right, that is actually exactly what we'll be doing to get our videos. So we will let our videos equal to this. And then we'll return in our hash just the videos. Now, let's see this working. We'll go over to our videos, and there we go. We are pulling 8 different videos from the server. Now let's go ahead and put async data in our individual video route. So we will change this to async data. We will get the context, and we'll let our response equal context.axios.get. And we will type in our entire route. And in a little bit, we will make it so we don't have to type in this entire route every time. We'll get context.params.id for our ID. All right, so that'll be our response, and then we'll get our video, and that will be response.data.data.attributes. Then we will return that video from our data hash, and that means we can delete this videos array, and we can delete this computed property. And we can check, and I forgot to put async await there. So here we go. This should be working now. Excellent, it is. So we've got async data working in both of the pages that need it. Let's go ahead now and do some stuff that will make it a little bit nicer and neater. So first, we can get axios and our params directly instead of having them on context. And we'll see that it's still working. And we can do that here as well. So that's just a little bit of niceness. And then an even bigger deal is setting the base URL. So we'll go ahead and cut this localhost 3000/API, and then we will go to our nuxtconfig.js. We'll go to axios in there, and we'll set our base URL to this. And it will want single quotes. All right, and what that means is now we don't have to put this on any of our URLs. So it is all still working. And these are now much neater. And if we decide to change our base URL, or we want to change it based on whether we're in dev or in production, we'll want to do that, then it's only one place that needs to change. And that's the basics of how we use async data and axios. Let's take a look at the title of our page. So it says View Screencast Nuxt. And it's going to say that for every single one of our pages. So let's go ahead and make that a little bit more useful for our users. And as a side effect, this will help our SEO by helping the web crawlers understand what's in the pages better. So to do this, we will use the head attribute. And so head, the default is in nuxt.config.js, and then it can be overridden on individual pages. Let's change it in nuxt.config.js first. So it's currently getting it from the package name. And let's change that so we're defining it directly. View screencasts. Learn VueJS through cool tutorials. Now we'll go to our page and reload, and we'll see that the title has changed. So this is a good default, and that'll be good for our home page and any pages where we forget to add our own title. But let's go ahead and update the title on some other pages. So we will start with the videos index. And we will have our head and our title here. And our title will be view screencasts dash video list. And we'll go to that page, and we'll see that it has been updated to view screencasts dash video list, whereas everything else is still the default. Now let's put this on our ID, and so this is the parent page to edit and index. So we'll see whether it is inherited. All right, so it looks like it is inherited. Good. Now let's try to make this more dynamic. So we'll want the video's name, and that means we'll have to get data from asyncData into our head. So let's turn this head into a function, and we'll be returning a hash with the title. But the title will not be this static value. It will, let's just start with the title of the video. So we'll get this.video that's been returned from asyncData and use the name. And we reload this, and good, we've got the name there. We'll go ahead and add something afterwards. Excellent. So currently we have the same title for the show and the edit page. What if we wanted to change them up a little bit? We could copy this and put, let's say, watch video name dash view screencast in one, and edit in the other. But then we'd have to duplicate this. And for this small amount, that may be fine, but I want to show you another technique, and that is the title template. So the title template, you have what's going to be shown, and then %s, where you put the title from the child pages. So here in index, we will have our title in our head, and here we'll put watch. And let's go ahead and see that it's showing up there. One thing to note about this technique, though, is that if a title is not defined, then it will just use the default. So we're no longer getting what we were before of this going in the title. So that is something to keep in mind. And as I see it, there are two ways around this. One is to put a blank title here. And then, there we go. It's showing up as our title template, just blank, and then what's in the title template. The other option is to just make sure you don't forget anything. I think this is a better, more robust strategy, but we still do want a title here. So we will put this title as edit, and now it will say edit name of video. Now, one thing to keep in mind when using the title template is it looks like there can only be one title template active at any one time. So if we go here to our videos and define a title template as, let's see, videos-%s. Then if we go to our watch page, it's not showing that because the title template comes from here. But if we go to videos, then it is showing up. So it's displaying this, and then before it, it's displaying this. So it looks like the title template that's used is the one that is the closest one above it in the page hierarchy. There are a lot more things you can do with the head tag and meta properties in general. If you're interested in that, look at the documentation for vue-meta. The head method is built on top of vue-meta, and so with just a couple small syntax differences, the functionality is the same. With regular Vue, I cannot imagine building a large site without VueX. With Nuxt and hooks like asyncData, I can imagine it happening. It might still be better with VueX, but if you wanted to avoid VueX, then you'll have an easier time of it. And as a matter of fact, with our app as it is right now, we don't actually benefit from doing VueX in our current situation. But since a lot of you are probably interested in how to integrate it, we'll go ahead and make the change right now. To get started, we'll create our index file in the store, so index.js, in the store folder. And something to note is that it's not going to look like a VueX file that's in a regular Vue app. So instead of having a big ol' hash that you return, you export the state, the mutations, the actions, and the getters separately. And in Nuxt 2.x, you can still use the classic mode. So it's a lot closer to what it would look like in a regular Vue app. But that's going to be removed in Nuxt 3. And you do save quite a bit of boilerplate by just using the new modules mode. So for our very simple store today, we're going to be exporting a state and a mutations hash. And so the state is just going to be this function. For our very simple app today, it'll just be videos that has an empty array. Now we'll go ahead and export our mutations. And that's just going to be a hash. And we'll have one mutation called set videos. It will take in the state and an array of videos. And for now, what it'll do is it'll just set the videos on the state equal to the videos that come in. Now, let's go ahead and use this in our videos index page. So we'll still be getting the videos that way. But instead of doing it in asyncData, we're going to be doing it in the fetch function. So fetch it's a hook like asyncData, but instead of returning a data hash, it just lets you do stuff. So in this case, we're going to be calling out to the store in order to commit that mutation. So we'll call store.commit set videos and then pass in our videos. And there's no need for a return value because we'll be fetching our videos straight from the store. So go store.state.videos to grab them. And let's check and see if this all works. We are here on our videos index page reloading, and it does indeed work. Now let's go implement VueX in our individual video pages. And so here, once again, instead of using asyncData, we'll use fetch, and we'll pass in the store as one of the arguments as well. And now it becomes a little bit less clear on how to do this. So we could commit the individual video into our videos array and then filter those videos when we're grabbing our individual video. That's one option. And if we did that, we'd have to make sure that it's not interfering with the videos set here. So it'd have to be a set instead of just an array. Our other option is to have something like current video, which, part of me just really doesn't like that, but it does seem more efficient than, doing all the rigmarole around filtering out the videos and making sure you're not adding an extra of them. I would say that if downloading the videos data was expensive, and you could be sure that when you visit this page, they'd already been downloaded, such as, for example, if they are downloaded on the initial page load for the entirety of the app, then it could be worth it to go and just grab it from this array. And then you wouldn't even have to make this API call here. But as it is, we're not sure whether the videos have been loaded, so we might as well just go grab this and set it to current video. So let's go ahead and use the current video object. Not because it's necessarily the best long-term choice, but because we don't really know what the best long-term choice will be, what the needs of our app are. And so while we're demonstrating VueX, we might as well go ahead and do the simpler one. All right, so we've set the current video, and here, now we don't need to return this video. We actually just need to commit this. All right, now we've set the current video, and here we'll grab the store.state.current video. And then we'll see when we click here, it is not actually working. And we can see that it's because we're using this .video in head. And so we could copy this and replace it here. And then it will start working once we use a this dot there. There we go. So now it's working. But this is a little bit long and unwieldy to use every time. And so we can make a computed property for video, and that will return basically this. And now we can call this.video.name here and just video here. And we'll see that it's still working. We could also import the map state function from VueX. And that would let us shorten this a little bit. So we'd call map state, and then we'd call it like that. So if you're wanting to use VueX, that's how to do it. And if you're wanting to use modules, then it's also really easy. So we've created our index.js. But if you want to create a module, you just create a file in the store folder with the name of the module you want. And then you do it just like the index.js. You export your state, your mutations, your actions, your getters, and it will automatically be put into the modules. And it will, by default, be namespaced. You might also be thinking, is this really worth it to use VueX? And that's a good question. So here we've added 5 lines here, and 3 lines here, and a line here. So we've added almost 10 lines for doing something that was previously accomplished with just this. And so I would say for an app this simple, then no, VueX is not worth it. And I don't know enough about using more complex patterns in Nuxt to tell whether asyncData is going to take care of all your needs or whether you do need to use VueX. All right, that was a lot of information. Thank you so much for sticking with it, and I hope you learned as much as I did. So now what we're going to do is we're going to do a quick review of everything we learned. Well, the major parts of what we learned. And then we're going to go over what comes next. So the first thing we did after learning why we would want to use Nuxt in the first place was we created our Nuxt app. By using npx create Nuxt app, we were able to create all these files, which is all you need to get started. Then we took a quick detour changing the port that it's served on because it conflicted with our backend server. Then we got into the meat of Nuxt, which is the pages folder. So our app at this point has two top-level pages. The home page, which is at pages/index.vue, which was already created when we created our Nuxt app. And then the videos page. And that videos page had two subpages. There was /index, so that would show it /videos, and then /id, which that would show at /videos/ and then the underscore means it's dynamic. So it could be a 5, it could be a 10, it could be whatever number you wanted. And you could even have dynamic words, although an ID is usually an integer or a hexadecimal. Then our videos/dynamic ID page has two child pages, index and edit. All right, so those are the pages we created. And so pages are like Vue components, but they have some extra properties. First is that the folder structure will determine our route structure. Notice that in this commit, there are no changes to any route file, and in fact, there's no route file at all. Another difference between the pages and the regular Vue components is that instead of using router view to house all the child routes, we use NuxtChild, which it can just be a drop-in replacement for router view. But it can also, and maybe router view can do this, but I hadn't seen it in the documentation, it can take in props, just like a regular component. And so here we're passing down the video to both edit and index. And you'll see that we have the props array there. So that's what we learned in that section. And as a quick review of the actual code we wrote, we had our data property, and it's returning just an array of videos and then looping through them. And that's in the videos index. And then in the videos/ID, we had our videos array, and then a computed video property, which we pass down to our edit and index files. Next, we put in our links. And Nuxt link is pretty much a drop-in replacement for router link. So here we're just linking to an individual video show page or videos/ID/index. And here we're linking to a videos edit page. And here's another link to a video show page. Next, we learned about layouts. And so the default layout takes care of a lot of the stuff that would normally go in app.vue. And since we don't have an app.vue, it needs somewhere else to go. And so that's what our default layout is for. So we put in a navbar, and we also wrapped the main app in a div with ID of default body. That allowed us to do some very basic styling that made our app look a little bit better. So the default layout is just making up for stuff that Vue can do and Nuxt does in a different way. The real power comes in alternate layouts. So here we have a theater layout, which has the entire background black, and it can stretch as wide as you want, no navbar. And we assign that to the theater page with this one line. Very simple. It is worth noting, of course, that the layout can only be assigned to top-level pages. So you couldn't assign it directly to pages/videos/id/index. It has to be in a top-level page. Next, we went over how to use asyncData and axios to connect to a server. So here in our nuxt.config.js, we have our base URL option. And so we're assigning where we're going to be going on the server. So here it's localhost. In your production app, it's going to be different. So then in our pages/videos/index, where previously we had just been returning an array of hard-coded videos, now instead of returning it in data, we're returning it in asyncData, which is like data, and in fact, everything we return there will be placed on the data hash, but the template won't load until all the promises are resolved. And so here we are using axios, which we're bringing in through an argument, and we're calling .get to get our videos. And then we're processing it, and then we are returning just a hash with the videos key on it. And then we'll see that on the ID page, we are doing something similar, except instead of calling to /videos, we are calling to /videos/the ID, and we can get the params from the first argument of asyncData, which you could call it as context.params, or do it like this. And of course, remember to do async before this, so you can use await. And then process the response and just return the video key. And notice that we can get rid of this computed as well. All right, so we learned how to use asyncData and axios. Then we learned how to do our head tags and titles. So we focused on the titles, and in nuxt.config.js, we put in a nice default title. So if a title is not defined on a specific route, then it will use this one. Then we went and on our individual pages, and I realize I'm using routes and pages interchangeably. I hope that's not too confusing. So on our video/index page, we have our head object, and then in the title key, we are putting this string. And so that's what's going to display on our tab as the title. And it's also what's going to be used by search engines. Then in videos/ID, we do something a little bit more complex. So first, we are using the name of the specific video. So _ID makes it dynamic. And so we can get the dynamic video. And second, we are introducing the title template. So this %s adds on the title, and together those make the title template. So when we go to this page, it will be watch video name -view screencasts. And when we go to edit, it will be edit video name -view screencasts. Oh, and notice that if you use dynamic properties in the head, then you need to have it as a function. Whereas if you're just hard coding stuff, you can have it as an object. Now, we focused a lot on the title because that was really easy to see, but there's a lot more you can do with this. And if you're curious, you can look up the vue-meta documentation because Nuxt implementation is just a thin layer over vue-meta. Finally, we looked at VueX, and it's really easy to implement. We just go to store/index.js, and instead of doing an entire hash and creating a view store explicitly, we return our state, our mutations, our actions, and our getters. When we're calling the store, it's just the same as it would be in a regular Vue app. And if you want to use modules, then it's just like how you do it in store/index, except you name the file the name that you want the module to be. And so it could be store/videos. And then it would automatically go into a namespaced videos module. Finally, when you're calling to your store, you're going to use the fetch hook. That is new in Nuxt, and what it does is, like asyncData, it doesn't allow the template to be displayed until all the promises have resolved. However, unlike asyncData, it does not return something to the data hash. And so you can go ahead and instead of returning your video, you commit it to the store. And that's the basics of Nuxt. If you want to learn more, I have 2 pieces of good news for you. The first is that you should know enough now about Nuxt that you can understand the API documentation on the official site. The second is that I'm going to continue this series. However, I'm going to be doing it as part of my longer Building a VueJS Screencasting App from Scratch series. If you've been watching, then that will be excellent news, because that means we're going to take everything we've built over 15 videos and 8 hours, and we're going to be learning how to do all of that in Nuxt, but without having to relearn the basics. If this is your first time on the channel, on the other hand, then you have a choice to make here. So if you are very new to Vue, then I'd recommend starting from the beginning and watching it through. If you're an advanced Vue user and Nuxt is the only thing that's new to you, then I'd just recommend waiting until part 17, which is going to be the next video, and following along. And there might be a couple points where you'll be like, huh, what was that? Because we copied and pasted some code. But mostly you'll be able to keep up. If you're somewhere in between, then maybe start from the beginning, but watch it at double or triple speed, and slow down on the parts that you don't understand. Whatever you decide, I'm happy to have you here. And now we're going to go to the end screen, where we're going to have clicky links over here, and you're going to have like 20 seconds to click on one of them. All right, I'll see you soon.